Okay, welcome to this summary video of week 5. This week was all about integrated care. We've got lots to talk about today. So my name is David Robert Shaw. I'm the lead academic for this course, Bridging the Dementia Divide. And this week I'm joined by...
Good morning, my name's Susan Brock. I work in one of David's teams in health and nursing and also in the counselling and psychotherapy team at UDOM. I'm a mental health nurse by background and also a psychotherapist.
Yeah, so Susan's got a really broad range of interests, but is joining me today to talk about integrated care. So we all know that integrated care, hopefully by now, can be a good thing, and actually it's all about bringing services and redesigning services to make them person-centred and appropriate for people so they can receive the care or whatever input that they need at that particular time. I have to say we're on a journey, certainly in the UK. I don't think we are there with integrated care services yet. There are some good examples actually. Internationally in the United States and various other places there are some good examples. But integrated care and interprofessional care as well has come about because there's been some quite high profile cases actually of the last 10 or 20 years really, where, and not just adults but children as well, where services have perhaps not worked together as well or as clearly as they could do, and people have had...
Could we say where they've failed?
Yeah, well absolutely, where they've failed, I think so, and I think, because people have died, actually. And they've all been, they've spoken to a person, they've had interviews, they've got data about somebody, and then another agency has come in and done the exact same things, but the two have never linked their activity together. And we're talking about police forces, care trusts, various social work services, all sorts of different services, voluntary care services, who have not done information sharing and they've not spoken to each other. And as Susan said, actually they have failed some people. A very high profile case has been Victoria Climbié. There was also Baby Peter recently in the UK, where services really just didn't speak to each other. So along those lines, we've had some comments on the discussion boards about information sharing and around confidentiality really. Sharon Mathis and Godwin Chaparadze have both been talking about where do we draw the line about integration and confidentiality, about sharing of records, and that it's a great thing to do, but actually about consent and making information available. So we know, don't we? We both learnt in practice that information is incredibly important. And actually when somebody comes into contact with a care service, often people do ask them repeated questions, for assessment purposes or other means. But actually we do have to ask some questions, and the questions that one person asks may be different to the questions that another person asks. But we need to keep a really good record of what's been going on. Now, any information, certainly in the UK, any information that's held about you as a person is protected under the Data Protection Act. And you have a right to access your data. Medical records can be accessed for a certain amount of time. And actually, you should really be consenting to your information being shared. It may be that in your medical record you consented to that a long time ago and they've carried on and keep sharing. But often we do ask people when we do assessments, don't we, that can we share information with other agencies if we need to do.
And that should be something that you should sign for, shouldn't it?
It should be, absolutely. And I'm sure that Susan will agree with me, actually, there are some cases where we have to share information, perhaps against people's consent. And that's really when people are at risk. So the case of a child, for instance, who may, having their parents may be abusing the child, for instance, we have to, that ordinarily the parent would consent to sharing information for that child if they were under age of consent. But we may have to share that information for the protection of the child.
Are we crossing over into the area of safeguarding here?
Well, absolutely. I mean, and actually safeguarding affects adults as well as children.
Absolutely.
And we're talking about vulnerable people in general. Often people with dementia are vulnerable people. Well, they are vulnerable people. The definition of a vulnerable person is very broad, isn't it? So thank you very much for sharing those discussion board posts. I think it's raised a really interesting question, and certainly one that I've been thinking about this week as well.
And we haven't got any obvious answers, have we?
No, absolutely.
Because it is really complex.
It is, and information held about some information can be shared, some can't be shared. I mean, to give you an example, you may go to the hospital and their medical records, you might have blood tests taken, they might be shared with your family doctor or general practitioner. But if you access mental health services, for instance, there are a separate set of records which are kept confidential. If you access sexual health records as well, they're also kept separate. And the three records often don't ever integrate. So, and the GPs or family doctors can often access hospital records, but not those other types of records.
So if the students on this MOOC are practitioners of one type or another, what's our basic recommendation that we're offering them about?
I think our recommendation will probably be to make sure that you get consent before sharing information, especially if it's sensitive information. But there may be some circumstances where you have to share information without asking for consent.
And if your students of the MOOC are users of health and social care services, then what do we recommend?
I would recommend that they ask people about their information, what's going to be done with it, who can it be shared with, and what's the purpose of the information. And that goes for anything. If you go into a shop, and they're asking for your email address, why are they taking it? What are they going to do with it? So thank you very much, Sharon and Godwin. There was some really good posts. Something that Susan and I really wanted to talk about was something that Alison Harris said, which was about how services can come together and be more integrated at a time where services are finding it so hard to cope with increasing pressures from austerity. It's work that takes time and nurturing, and we're all doing our best to firefight with little time to foster these links. Have you got any thoughts about that?
Oh yes. I certainly have. The services, I agree, Alison, are under increasing pressure from this notion of austerity. But I guess for me, I question why we've created a health and social care system where it's now, apparently in this century, acceptable to put people who are very vulnerable in the care of services that are under pressure of austerity. I wonder why we've made those choices as a country to do that.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think we talked about this before, didn't we? And that austerity is a thing which is a financial
decision
thing. It's a decision. It's a decision, and the health service in the UK has billions and billions of pounds, and certainly in other countries around the world, the United States, for instance, is a $1 trillion industry. We don't have an insurance system in the UK, and other countries do have that. And therefore that makes it much more difficult to access funding for care. But it is a choice, isn't it, about how we fund and which services we fund. As people on the ground, we often don't have that choice.
No.
And if we're working and chipping away and doing, as Alison has said about firefighting, which is often what we spend a lot of time doing, with minimal resources, we don't perceive that we have much input or influence. But it's really for us, we can speak to our managers and our directors of nursing, for instance, or whoever it may be.
And our politicians.
And our politicians is what we're going to come to next, really. I think if as a country we decide that, as people really, that dementia is an important thing that we should be spending money on, and I think we do. I think certainly in the UK there has been some moves. For instance, there's been a Prime Minister's challenge on dementia, which is talking about focusing money into certain areas. We can do that, I think.
We can. Right.
So, thank you very much, Alison, for sharing there. Thank you very much, Susan, for joining me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for asking me.
And next week is the last week of the course. We're going to be talking about end-of-life care. So, if you haven't done already, get your badges and the certificate, start thinking about the summative assessment. And I'll see you next week, hopefully with lots of questions about end-of-life care. So thank you very much for joining us this week, and we hope you enjoy the next week of the course.
An important topic, David.
Absolutely.